Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Your presenter today is Wes Snow, CEO and co-founder of Ascendix Technologies, the company behind Ascendix RE and the company that has been building commercial real estate technology and CRM solutions for 30 years. Wes, over to you.
Thanks, Alina. Appreciate it. And welcome to this webinar. I've got a lot I want to share with you, and let's get into it. So perhaps some of you on the phone resemble this broker. Um, you've got access to a CRM system, but you've never run a report in it. You might know how, but it's not something you do regularly. You're perhaps a top producer. And it's not because you don't know how to use a CRM that is preventing you from using it. It's that you have a deliberate decision to make. Do I take the next phone call? Do I chase the next deal? Or do I spend time putting data into a CRM system that is not intuitive and not really designed for my consumption? And as a result, unfortunately, that data that you've pulled from a meeting lives in your head, in a notepad, in your car, or perhaps in your inbox or sent items. The reality is the broker is not a training problem. The broker is a design problem. We're going to get into that in more detail. So I've been selling CRM into the commercial real estate industry for 20 years. And when we started, the notion was let's take all of the inefficiencies that exist in a commercial real estate brokerage, notably the fact that a lot of this data is stored in various places, whether it be Excel, Outlook, perhaps you've got a contact manager or the trusty old legal pad that's sitting to your right there. And we recognize that that inherently is inefficient. And if we can pull all that data together and consolidate it, efficiency gains can be had. Deeper insights into that data could be had as well. And moreover, sharing that information with others that are peers of yours in the organization is facilitated. What's happened in reality is that the consolidation mostly has not happened. And it's not because the idea is wrong. I think it's still very sound, but it's really because what we've asked brokers, the very people that are the beneficiaries of this tool, what we've asked them to do to make it happen. So I still believe that this is a solid solution, but I just think that the old way of deploying it and using these systems is broken. It just needed to be changed, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So for the next 30 minutes or so, there are four key topics and themes that we're going to discuss. The first one is, as I broached, why CRM hasn't worked for brokers today. And then with the advent of AI, what's fundamentally changed in the world of AI that makes CRM more usable, more approachable. And we're going to cobble that down and distill it into some practical takeaways for you. And then as I've had conversations over the last 3 months, a topic I never thought would come up is, do we even need a CRM now that I've got tools like Claude and ChatGPT? And maybe a subset of that conversation has been around, well, I'm subscribing to a CRM tool. I'm hearing all this noise about vibe coding and being able to build applications that are for myself. The build versus buy argument has come back to the forefront. And if we've got time, perhaps in the Q&A, we can talk about that. And then lastly, I'll land this from academic and theoretical discussions into practical here and now use cases where AI has fundamentally changed the way in which people can view and perceive interacting with a CRM tool. So I frame this up in a terminology called taxes. We are asking the users of CRM to pay three specific taxes. You might also call them friction points. I've never met a broker who has enjoyed entering data, and that's true for anybody, candidly. And so the first is this capture tax, getting data that's in your head into a system in a reasonable amount of time. And we're going to talk about ways in which that could be changed. And let's assume that the data does get into the CRM system, the challenges and the tax or the friction around getting data out. I have, again, not met many brokers who are willing to sit through training and learn, SQL syntax and or creating a report that's going to help them get that data out. And so there's a friction point there. And if we're not getting data in, we're likely not all that motivated to use the system because we're not going to get any value out. The other thing is where these tools have been deployed historically. Even today, I'm showing you on a laptop this presentation. Perhaps some of you are joining remotely, but the reality is brokers spend some time behind the desk, but oftentimes they're out in the field. And so the interface that you're used and asked to engage with the CRM tool is not where you are, in a truck, a lobby, parking garage, what have you. And so this concept of mobility is also a huge tax or friction point that we're going to talk to. So let's set the stage here. You've just gotten out of a meeting. Now what? So you're in the car. Everything's fresh in your mind, and you're a good steward of the CRM system. So you open up your mobile application and you go to your mobilized CRM application, if you have one. Now you're asked to go in and navigate through the application, get to the appropriate add edit form for a company, a contact, or a note. And if you're lucky, you find your way through that and have enough information to accommodate the minimum standard of data that's required for a CRM record to be created. You could do that, or more likely, and what's most probable is that you go on about your business and you make the next phone call and go to the next appointment. Why is this the case? Well, it's hard. Navigating through all those screens and knowing where to go and what data to put in. It's time intensive as well. That mere act of just entering in a new company and contact record and perhaps a note is is likely a 5-minute operation, and it's not intuitive. The form shape is really not where you are, and so what's the result? You know the data matters, but still you don't enter it in because of these friction points. And if you do it all, it's really the bare minimum. So let's imagine, and we're talking about the capturing that data. Let's say that you've cleared that hurdle and you've got the data in. And let's talk about that retrieval piece there. If you did get the data in, what would be your reward for doing so? A list view of records, maybe meaningful, probably not all that dynamic and all that informational. Maybe a saved filter or two, or maybe it's a report that you could create there. But the reality is, as I mentioned earlier, reporting is not a skill that I've seen many brokers master, and as a result, they don't do it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, when people can't get good information out, they stop putting data in. The two taxes or friction points start to multiply or compound. Friction on the way in feeds the emptiness on the way out, and the story goes, and it's a vicious cycle. So what did we do about it as a publisher of software? We got our smart people together and started thinking about how we could streamline these forms, maybe putting less fields on the form, making it abundantly easy to find where to go and add a new record. We made fields required so that we could get good data hygiene and make sure that when the data did get in, that there was some meaningful data that you could get out of it. Um, that was mediocre and at best in terms of reaction. And then leaning into the A personalities that are the user community that we're selling to, we built leaderboards and dashboards, almost shaming people into it and leaning into that competition type element there. And that really didn't get much results. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, mobilizing this and taking this application that was designed to be consumed on a desktop and shrinking it down to a mobile phone. And ultimately, all we did was make for a very congested and clicky experience. Every one of those, as you've heard, is us treating the broker as the thing that needed fixing. It was never a broker discipline problem. It really is an interface problem. So I'm assuming that those on the phone have had some experience with CRM in the past. And let me paradigm shift for you. Let's imagine an alternative scenario. I'm going to bring up my iPhone here. And let's imagine you're on the road and you've got an AI tool. In this case, it's Claude. And you've just gotten out of a meeting and you're actually wanting to capture that information in. But alternative to a mobile app where there's forms and so forth, we do something similar to this. I just got off of a call. Let me just get my note taker here to properly behave. I just got off of a call with Caleb Carter over at Conroe Partners. They're looking for about 12,000 feet of Class A office in Las Colinas, and they want to be in by the second quarter of next year. Their budget is around 34 bucks. Set them up for me. We'll let that run for a minute and come back for a second, but let's talk about what just happened here. There were 3 shifts that I think are important to point out. You noticed I didn't type a thing. That was natural language prompting that was buoyed by the speech to text transcription that is native to your iPhone. And that very same speech to text transcription is available on a desktop or a laptop as well. Fingers are off the keyboard and you're literally just talking normal language to the system. Pretty interesting input device, the voice. Secondly, intent replaces syntax. The old way, again, meant knowing where the forms were and how the records relate. AI has a particularly great property about understanding your intent and inferring what you're trying to do there, and not only understanding what you're saying, but also having the intelligence to take that data that you're giving it and putting it in the right locations. And then thirdly, ambiguity tolerance is the actual breakthrough. Instead of having to formulate queries in full sentences, you're now just talking as you normally would, and half thoughts and incomplete sentences are absolutely tolerated. And it's candidly, I think, the criteria that's required in order for a tool like this to be acceptable. So let's flip back over to the iPhone scenario and see what happened. So it created a company record, it created a contact record, and it also created what we call a lease preference. And the broker didn't have to know how to go and create a company, and moreover, how to connect a newly created contact record to the company, and moreover, didn't have to know at all where to go and capture these lease details. It just knows that. And so I think that's a huge friction removing device. And this is just one example of many that we'll be showcasing today. So let's keep going. Another example, who should I be calling about the vacancy on the north side? It's a thought that probably comes up pretty regularly on a daily basis. But that thought and translating that into getting data out of the CRM system is not a trivial thing. That thought, it's not a query. It doesn't express any filters, no object name, no date range. It's realistically the kind of ask of a CRM system that never gets um, produced or never gets fallen through. The reality is a traditional CRM can't answer that. It needs syntax, it needs specificity, and it punishes ambiguity. The reality is being able to act on these half-formed thoughts is really what is the difference between a tool that a broker is going to use and one that is just going to sit there as an icon on their desktop. So let's toggle over to the question of, do I need a CRM anymore? And people have been using Claude and ChatGPT for creative uses. They're abstracting documents, perhaps authoring more elegant emails and so forth, and getting real value out of it. And it stands to reason that say, well, I'm getting all this value out of this, and I'm not getting value out of my CRM solution. Do I really need one? And then an ancillary to that is the whole, well, if I'm not using this CRM, why don't I build one for myself? And as mentioned earlier, there's some things we can talk about in the Q&A session if people are interested in that. But the way I'd like to summarize this is AI without a system of record, in this case, a CRM tool, is like a brilliant analyst with amnesia and no colleagues. What do I mean by that? So I've got this, dissected into three areas: durability. Conversations that you have with Claude or ChatGPT, they end, and they're represented as threads on your left-hand navigation bar. Perhaps you've put them into projects to organize them a bit more, but they're not efficiently stored. And moreover, as you engage with it, there is a an inefficiency not only in how it's stored, but also an inefficiency in how the tokens that you're spending when accessing that information are utilized. At the end of the day, conversations end and records persist. And that's, I think, a key differentiator between just using AI and not having something where it's grounded and stored. The other is this is a one-to-one relationship. It's great that you're benefiting from it, but what about the people down the hall? Your administrator, assistant, perhaps the broker in charge, management. They're not getting much, if any, visibility into all these sessions that you have there. And so, if there's no system of record, there's no shared truth. And moreover, and I think if you're really going to lean into the promise of what a CRM can deliver, is you've got to understand that you've got to have structure you can compute over. Imagine asking for a Claude implementation to go in and generate a pipeline report for you. Maybe run a query for the number of commissionable dollars that I expect to land in the next 3 to 6 months. Almost impossible to do that without a system of record. So what am I saying? I don't say don't use AI, but I would say that AI is not a replacement for your system of record or a CRM. It's the new interface to it, much like you saw with the iPhone example just a moment ago. So I thought it'd be interesting for you to just hear about a client that we're working with that wasn't using AI and now very much is and is benefiting from it. This is a capital markets brokerage. They place debt and structured finance. And when we got on the scene, they had a CRM tool, and in fact, it was a Salesforce based implementation. And when they were prospecting deals, they would search Salesforce, doing it through the usual querying. They would rely on their memory. And because of the hardships inside of the CRM database, there were spreadsheets that they stored separately. No AI, lots of inefficiency. Fast forward, connecting Claude to their CRM system, they're now prompting their way through searching for prior deal quotes and capital programs, and even being able to get suggested recommended lenders for those deals and adding those lenders to their deal flow, all with just a simple prompting exercise. For deal quotes, these come in oftentimes via email. And it was someone's job to go in there and take those quote details from those emails and hand enter them into Salesforce. Fast forward, using AI techniques, those emails are now being parsed into data that's now being captured inside of the CRM system with no manual data entry whatsoever. Oftentimes, 4 to 5 option quotes at a time being brought into the deal that those quotes were related to without any hand entry whatsoever. And for those who might be in the capital markets world, lender programs, capital programs, they change regularly, and it's the broker's job to make sure that they stay on top of that. Unfortunately, with all the friction of updating that manually, it oftentimes doesn't happen. Now imagine Claude going in there and taking those changes to those lender programs and distilling them down into data that then gets deposited into Salesforce, that they can keep good governance over and a vibrant and updated inventory of those lender programs, so that when the sponsors come in the front door, they know who to match them up to. And then lastly, reporting a bear. You needed to know how to go and create reports if they didn't exist. You needed to know where to go access the reports that they did. And now leadership is simply just having a conversation with Claude. and they're asking the database directly. And no longer do they have to have skills on creating reports. They're just having a dialogue with an informed version of Claude that's grounded in all the data inside of their CRM system, in this case, Salesforce. So I've been, as mentioned earlier, been selling software to commercial real estate brokers for 20 plus years, and we've done a lot of innovations, lots of things that we're proud about, lots of things that got great resonance with the market, but nothing even comes close to the type of feedback that I'm getting from our prospects and our clients alike when I've showcased what I'm about to share with you today. Um, Comments like, "I feel like I'm in a dream sequence. This was a pipeline of wishes that we figured were never going to come true." And then after having demoed what I'll show you, the question is this really real, or is this just some mocked up demonstration? What I'm about to show you is all real product on the ground and available today. And I think a great translation of how AI can be put to commercial use and tackles and attacks those pain points that you experience today. We're going to showcase three products, the first of which is a product called Harvest. It became very apparent to us that a lot of the data that never gets captured inside of a CRM tool actually resides inside of your email box, whether that be inbound emails or sent items. Rich conversations that reference deals, companies, contacts, properties, lease and sale comps are all sitting there for the taking, but they've never been liberated and put into the CRM system because it just takes too much time. Rather do without than spend the time to capture that. And so we'll show a new way to think about that. And for those that are inside of a CRM system and they're frustrated with getting data in by filling out forms and frustrated with querying the database, we've got an agent that sits inside of the the CRM system that acts as an alternative interface, if you will, to those usual tasks that you're doing on a daily basis. And then lastly, some of you may be sitting here going, well, I have a CRM tool, but I'm also using Claude or ChatGPT. How can I utilize those tools and still benefit from having a CRM system as well? And so we know that you're already working there. And so instead of having to train you to use an AI tool that's inside of a CRM system, why not leverage what you already have? And so we're going to show you the magic and the key unlock that happens when you take these really robust AI tools and you connect them directly to a CRM system. So let's get into it. So this is the Harvest solution. In advance of this, I forwarded an email to Harvest, and it was about a lease comp swap that I agreed to with a peer broker of mine in the market. They sent me two, I'm sending them two. And so that email got forwarded to Harvest, and you'll see that email here on the left-hand side. Attached to that email was this lease comp document that outlined tenants, the property related to that tenant, and the lease details here as well. So in the past, you would have taken that and likely just left it there or had somebody go in there and enter that for you. Well, now fast forward to where AI is involved and it's abstracted all the data from that attached document and it's surfaced these various documents. First and foremost, asking me to review the property details that had been pulled from it. And so we can see the Victory Park Tower referenced in the PDF, and now it's parsed all that and it's suggested records values into this form that you had to type nothing into, giving you an opportunity to review its work and confirm that all those things were right, and perhaps even giving you an opportunity to augment things about this property that you know but weren't included in that attachment. And so it's no longer data entry, but rather a review, moving you from a data entry clerk to more of a reviewer of data. And so it's the process of just going in and grabbing all that data and bringing it into the system. Let's go to a lease record here just to show you the attachment again. We've got Suite 720 down below, and all those details about the lease are in here, including the size, type of use case, when's the term, expiration date, and the months, all there for my consumption. Let's flip over to another example. Some may not get lease comps in your database, but I certainly know that there are a lot of flyers that are flowing around some of which are market properties that you have that it would be great to have in your database. And so here's a sample property flyer, multiple pages in nature. And when forwarded to Harvest, it takes that document, it understands who's the broker, the brokerage rather, the brokers, as well as the property that's being outlined here. And if we just drill into that, we can see another example of that document referenceable on the left-hand side, but now parsed into fields on the right-hand side. Again, doing nothing more than reviewing the job that was done and then committing that to the database and having a new record created. So that's the Harvest tool. And while I've shown you lease comps and perhaps sale comps and property flyers, think of other documents like purchase sale agreements, lease agreements, memorandums that capture all this really rich information that ultimately would be great to have in a centralized CRM system for the durability, the shareability, and the reportability, as we mentioned earlier. So I mentioned also the in-app agent. This is the AI agent within CRM. And as mentioned earlier, looking at this as more of an alternative to going in and creating new company and contact records by opening up these forms and such. So let's do a couple things. I'm going to do a natural language prompt, but I'm also on the desktop, which is novel to some. I'm going to enable my voice to do the typing for me. So let's go after it. I just got off of a call with Marcus Cagle at Spearman and Associates. They're in Dallas, about 70 employees. Marcus is their director of operations. His phone is 214-575-0182, and his email is marcus@spearman.com. Their office is located at 2625 Elm Street, Dallas, Texas, 75226. Please add them to the system. So again, not typing a thing and not being overly careful about the words I'm mentioning. I'm just talking normal style here. And now within seconds, instead of me having to go and navigate through this, I'm able to actually see Spearman and Associates is a newly created company record. You see the address is here. And moreover, Marcus Cagle was not only added to the database, but it was connected to the appropriate parent company. So this is just a fundamental breakthrough on how you can get data in. It's certainly company and contact records, but it works for others, properties, deals, etc. So let's take this day in the life further. Set up a follow-up call with Marcus Cagle for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm told I told him, and there I go with the stumbling here. I told him I have some options ready by then. Again, handling ambiguity, not having to have great syntax, just it gets the gist, and now it's created that new activity that's directly related to Marcus, and you can see that located here. One last thing, just to kind of wrap up the reality of this. Log a requirement for Marcus Cagle. They need 10,000 to 15,000 square feet of office and up to $30 per square foot triple net. Their current lease expires in March of 2027, and they want to be moved in by the second quarter. Now, that example was somewhat similar to what we just did in the iPhone scenario, but I wanted to showcase this as well. We'll just get rid of that little tweak there. And so now I've instantiated or created a new company and contact record. I've scheduled a follow-up task, but now I've captured these requirements as well connected to Marcus. And you can see that even though it translated my words wrong, it still was able to capture that particular lease preference where we got the 10,000 to 15,000 square feet. We've got the required move-in date and the rent maximum of $30, all without me having to know exactly where to go and input this. So it's a real breakthrough, and I think ultimately a move that makes this much more appealing to use. So those are the two tools that are within the application, but let's recognize that not everybody might do that. And if you are in fact using Claude, the thing that's being shown here is that it's not just an everyday instance of Claude. We've actually connected Claude directly to our CRM database. And in this case, it's the Ascendix RE database. So it knows how to authorize connection to it. It's very well grounded on all the records that are in the database and the business logic that marries all those records together such that I can do things like the following. I've got the Lone Star Commerce Center disposition. Who are my buyers and who should I not bother calling at all? I dare say that this would be hard for a CRM system to do for us, especially the not bothering to call at all piece here. It's very deliberate. It only gives you a query-based scenario. And so now you can see that it's querying the database and it's pulling up that Lone Star Center disposition and marrying it up against who are those in the database that have profiles for this type of a disposition. And so we can see these three fit the mark, but it also, as I asked it to do, is skipping over. It's saying, yeah, you shouldn't even call these because of these reasons, all cap out well under the $58 million, which is where this disposition is going. So that's one example. And then in a kind of a pre-prompted scenario, you can see some other things that are a bit more immersive. I'm pricing Kingsbridge Logistics Center. Show me price per square foot and cap rate to help put a defensible price range for this particular deal. So based on data that I already have in the database, sale comps, I'm trying to put a proper price on a new disposition, and I'm grounding it with the comps that are in my database with nothing more than a prompt. Flipping the script here, more on a tenant rep side, I'm looking for those listings that fit a certain requirement. And here we have those particular listings here based off of the requirements that were outlined here, 50,000 to 250 square footage range here. All that was nothing more than a conversational prompt, and it's brought back records that in the past would have required some sort of knowledge of how to query the database. Now it's all been distilled into your AI tool, in this case, Claude. So that broker that we talked about earlier, still not entering in any data. And it's because of these friction points. We've now moved that entry point to where that person is and actually are seeing real time how people are transforming the way that they think about CRM. So hopefully this is helpful. I did want to leave some room for Q&A, and we're almost on the mark here. So why don't we go ahead and hand it over to Alina and have her field some of those questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Wes, for a great presentation. Just a reminder, we've got about 10 minutes for the questions. So yeah, let's get straight into it. The first one is about build versus buy. So you said you'd come back to build versus buy. We've had that conversation internally, and what's your honest take on it?
Yeah. So I know there's the allure of seeing about building your own, and there are a number of dimensions that are maybe not thought of. One of which is the work that you do early on in building a prototype or a demoable solution that might be beneficial for you is far different than something you put into production. There's a huge gap in the things that have to be taken into consideration. Supportability, right? You build it and you turn it on Monday and something goes wrong. Who's there to own that innovation and roadmap in support of that? These are things that we as a software company are all too appreciative of that don't really occur to those who have been exposed to these AI tools and have found that, wow, with just a little bit of energy, I can put a really great screen on here and it looks like it works. But there are just a lot of things under that layer that need to be dealt with. Another that is wildly unappreciated is integrations, right? So today's CRM tools have an ecosystem of integrations that are already pre-built for you. Integrations with Outlook, with SharePoint, telephony solutions, marketing platforms, and those would all be required of you to go in there and build, and that they are not optional in many cases. And so that's something that I think is underappreciated as well. Compliance burden, security, whether it be SOC 2 compliancy or otherwise, there's a heavy burden on publishers to deal with security and making sure that this database that holds really, really confidential information is safe and secure. And if clients and others that are relying on your services are uh, astute and start asking questions, then the answers to those are probably not going to be all that great. The other is data migration, both in and out of it. Data migration with an undocumented or not so well documented data schema is not a trivial task. And then I mentioned earlier, innovation. It's great to build it, but at the end of the day, you're a broker, a professional out there that makes money not in writing software, but in doing deals. And make no mistake about it, this is a journey, not an event. And once you put something out there, it does need to be innovated on and evolved, and it's a longer term commitment than just a one-time scenario. We could and have actually put podcasts that talk about this in much more depth, but hopefully that gives you a few pointers in terms of the build versus buy considerations and pitfalls.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Wes. Just a quick note, while we're here, we still have a few questions here, but just in case you would like to see how Ascendix handles any specific workflow of yours, you'll see a button on your right-hand side, which will take you to a form. Feel free to fill it out, and we'll get in touch to talk your specific case through. So, yeah, we still have a few minutes. So let's jump into the next question, which is from Michael. And yeah, it's about Claude subscriptions. Would a team of users, specifically two, needs to get a Claude team account to integrate, or could each of each user's Claude accounts to be integrated with Ascendix?
Yeah, you can do it individually. Of course, there are some benefits to having a team account for being able to share some of the skills and instructions, but it absolutely can work where you have a deployment and you've got two people that have their own separate subscriptions. Those can both be integrated separately. So there's no mandate that you have a team or a enterprise subscription to Claude for this to work. It can be done individually.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one from Samantha. What happens when it gets something wrong? That's a good one. They don't want garbage written into that database. So that's a question.
Yeah. So as you might have seen in the harvest solution, there was a human in the loop stage there. As you noticed, it abstracted the data, but it suggested those records for review before pushing them into the database. And that's true. And not only the harvest tool, but the way that you can and should instruct Claude is to, before writing records to the database, get a preview screen so you can review what it's about to do before it does it, right? And that AI is great, but it's not perfect. It can hallucinate. It can gather incorrect context and come up with inferences on what you wanted in terms of data capture and so forth. So I think it's AI plus the human wins the day here. And so our tools were already designed to do that very thing, where you can ask and instruct it to give you a audit screen first before committing it. Now, once you've got it trained and there's a good rhythm and you have a certain trust level on the predictability, then you can start releasing some of those gates there. But initially, I would keep them in place.
Okay, thank you. Great. Moving on to the next one. Thank you, great presentation. It was. Thank you so much, Wes. I was wondering, where does the data go? Does the AI train on it?
So so if we're talking about harvest and the in-app agent, the data never leaves the platform, and so there's no training going on in that, but it all stays within the database. Now, with regards to the external Claude connector, of course, when you query that data, it does surface up inside of your Claude solution, but depending on the filters and the toggles that you put in your Claude is entirely going to drive whether or not that data is going to be trained on. I've set it up where it's basically a black box for Claude. There's no data stored per se in a database. You're not You're not necessarily grabbing all that data and storing it somewhere else. It's just sitting there in the memory and those threads there. But if you've got the toggle set on where it's not going to be trained on, then you've essentially got all your data secured inside of the database, but you're just surfacing it up to reason over it and ingest it in the AI experience.
Okay. Yes, great. Thank you so much. Just looking at the chart here, we've got about 3 or 4 questions left. And the next one, we're not on Salesforce. Does any of this work for non-Salesforce users?
Yeah. So our products are clearly Salesforce based. However, we have a professional services arm as well that if you're not on Salesforce and are using tools like Claude and ChatGPT, we certainly have the wherewithal to connect those for you and the skills and the expertise to not only connect it, but also give governance around once you get it connected, making sure that there are proper guardrails and, as mentioned earlier, instructions so that the experience is a streamlined one. Just connecting it to database, it's been my experience that you have somewhat of a chatty experience. Claude's uncertain or Chat GPT is uncertain, so they are all always asking questions. I'm about to do this. I'm going to go search for data here. We can put grounding in there once we get familiar whatever database you have and understand the data structures and put those guardrails, instructions, and skills in there so that when you are engaging with it, much like you saw in today's demo, it just gets the job done as opposed to this Q&A and chattiness that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Wes. I just saw another question from Michael, which links to the previous one. So let
Okay.
me just read it out. To you, thank you. Regarding my Claude question, so the previous one about Claude licenses. If we use our own accounts, since we both have full access to everything in the database, would anything we do from our individual accounts still be visible in Ascendix for both of us?
So this is a good one. When we connect via Claude, we are authorizing through the Salesforce security permissions and do not circumvent that in any way, shape, or form. So in a real sense, the governance that you've established at the Salesforce level, who can see what records, who can't see records. Traditionally, company and contact records are largely available, but when you get into deal records, they're locked down. Nothing that you're doing with a Claude connection is circumventing that. It is all respecting all that. So what you can see inside of your CRM system is the same data that you have access and can see through Claude. So just think of it as an alternative interface. Although it's connected through this protocol, it really is just an alternative interface accessible to the data that you would have accessible to you if you were inside of the actual true CRM tool.
Okay. Michael, hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next one, which is about licenses again. Do we need separate AI licenses on top of the CRM, and how does the pricing work?
Yeah, so our AI suite, which is what you've seen today, is priced as a module on top of the core Ascendix RE licenses. And for those who may be asking that question, we can break out and provide a breakdown. But depending on the number of users that you have inside of your Ascendix RE instance, that will drive what the per month cost is for the org. Unlike the core licenses that are priced on a per user basis, the AI suite is priced on a per org basis driven by the number of users. And you'll find as that pricing is unveiled that it's pretty cost effective. So that's the pricing for the harvest tool and the AI agent that's inside of it. But bundled in that suite as well is the connection to Claude. Now we don't bundle a Claude license. That would be a bring your own external LLM, but the connection to it and the intelligence there is included in that. So you'd have to be mindful of the subscription of Claude that you have and know that you're responsible for token consumption and paying those when you're using Claude. But the tokens or what they call credits inside of the Salesforce world are all bundled and already apportioned in the pricing for that add-on bundle price of the AI suite. And again, for whomever might have asked that, we can have a follow-up and kind of break that down more granularly for you.
Yeah. I'm just conscious about the time because we're running out of it, and
Yeah.
I know that I'm conscious that we do have one question from Robert. Robert, if you're happy to click the button on the right hand side, you still have that button to get in touch with us, to fill out the form, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have in mind, and maybe test any of your workflows that are specific to your commercial real estate team and how you work with AI Suite. Yeah, just fill it out and we'll get in touch.
Yeah, be happy to have a discussion that's more specific about your circumstances.
Mhm.
I think you'll find that it's really eye-opening, and there's a lot that we can cover in a quick, short amount of time. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Thank you again, Wes, for a great presentation, and thanks everyone for the sharp questions and for joining us today. And it was a pleasure having you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.